Well, hello. How can you build an effective ham radio satellite system for $100 and sound awesome? Well, I have the answer. Radios are really cheap nowadays out of China. The Quansheng K6 I've used extensively for FM satellite operation, and it works really well. The added benefit to that radio is that if you update the firmware, you can increase or decrease the frequency step resolution down to even 10 hertz for a Doppler shift. And that works out really well. And those are $30, so there's 30 bucks right there. That leads you then to what can I use for a satellite antenna? Now there are commercial manufacturers out there such as Arrow, and it's a good quality product. It's just that you've seen the YouTube videos, and those guys are kind of twisting the antenna, twisting and twerking the antenna to get into the satellite good. And really on the receiver's end of that, it's not an enjoyable conversation because they're in and out of the satellite. You really can't make out anything. If you're working satellite operation, you want to be able to hear them crisp and clear, and they need to hear you crisp and clear, just like through your local FM repeater. That's what makes quality, effective satellite operation. So I built my own, and this project evolved over time. This is it right here. It's just wood construction, wood and copper and coax, basically. So this evolved over time. I wanted to build a simple antenna just out of Home Depot stuff, basically, that I wouldn't have to twist and turn. It would have a lot of gain, and it would have a small footprint too. You know, if you take out a two meter Yagi, it sticks out almost, 36, 40 inches wide. It's hard to fit through doors. So this has roughly 10-inch squares. And my first design for this antenna was to have a 4-element 2-meter Yagi and basically just fold the Yagi into squares. And if you look here, here's the driven element right here. And the end point is open. So that's just a half-wave dipole with an open end. And all the elements are like that. All the elements are open-ended. That comes at a cost. So a normal Yagi, 4-element Yagi, is going to have somewhat around a 50 ohm impedance, or maybe even lower because you're adding more elements on. Folding the ends in like that decreases the impedance even more to down around 10, 12 ohms or so. So I had to build an impedance matching network for 2 meters. And what it is 2 runs of RG58 coax. Here's where you plug the coax going to your radio in right here. And the impedance matching section is 2 pieces of RG58 coax, 50 ohm coax. That's 16.5 inches long. So that matches the radio's 50 ohm impedance down to about 10, 12 ohms or so. And it works really well. So for 2 meters, this works great, like that. It resonates around 146 megahertz, and the SWR is around 1.5 to 1. And what I've found too, I've experimented with several antennas before this one even. And with this one, the SWR doesn't change much at all as you bring it closer to your body and things like that. Other antennas do, so this is a good design for that. And my thought was, for 70 centimeters, I wanted to make it very simple. I didn't want to have duplexers, and I didn't want to have all this other stuff, multi-elements and everything. So the theory was, well, I think this will resonate somewhat okay on 70 centimeters too, 440 megahertz, the other band you have to use for satellite operation. Because 2 meters is an odd multiple wavelength of 70 centimeters. And that turned out to be partially true. The SWR was within reason, but it was still quite high. So I used this antenna with just those 4 elements to talk through the International Space Station repeater. And it worked really well. And let me tell you, you're using 70 centimeters as the downlink. And over the horizon here, as the space station was coming over the horizon, the distant horizon, it was about 600 miles away as the crow flies. Man, I could hear that thing dead silent, dead quieting, and I didn't have to twist the antenna or anything. That is a really good antenna on 70 centimeters for receive as it is. So, well, that's wonderful. And most FM satellites are using 2 meters for the uplink and 70 centimeters for the downlink. Well, and that will work just fine for that. Just as simple as that. If you're just using 70 centimeters for receive. So, but I wasn't satisfied with that. Because pretend I want to use this antenna for transponder operation. A lot of those have mixed modes, 70 centimeters up and 2 meters down and vice versa and all this other stuff. So I brought it back in and I thought, well, how can I make this? Let's do some testing to see let's see what using a 4-element, 2 meter, half-wave split loop quad, that's a mouthful, isn't it? What the front to back ratio would be on 70 centimeters if I were to use this as a transmitting antenna. Come to find out it was piss poor. For a transmitting antenna, it was good for receive, has lots of copper on 70 centimeters for receive, but for transmitting, the front to back ratio wasn't good at all. So I thought, well, how can I tweak this design without using duplexers to make this a good 70 centimeter transmitting antenna as well. So I put like a fan dipole concept, I put a 90-degree on the center coax right here, on the center of the coax, on this side of the dipole. I soldered an element for 70 centimeters. It's roughly 5.5, 6 inches long. I made it resonate the best it could right there. And so that improved it a little bit, but it's still just basically another dipole. So I had to add parasitic elements, a reflector, a driven element, or driven elements. So at first I said, well, how can I add resonant parasitic elements to this thing? So I decided to use just more RG58 tie wrapped to the other loops. Now pay close attention because the shield side of the coax is on this side of the antenna, and the parasitic elements have to align with that for it to be effective. And so I made a total of 7 elements in total on 70 centimeters with 6 parasitic elements in the shape of an L. So to isolate them from the copper elements, the shielding on the RG58 coax does that wonderfully. So I added those 3 elements right there using RG58 coax. And to get even more gain, I added 3 more copper elements just attached to the support structure on the wooden boom. And I used fiberglass rod to help make it all rigid. Let me tell you, the front to back ratio on 70 centimeters went through the roof. This thing is now, without using a duplexer and with minimal cost and minimal material, is a superb performer for both 2 meters and 70 centimeters uplink and downlink. Now, other little features to make rather than using just a wooden boom, it's kind of uncomfortable in your hands to hold. I bought all the stuff at Home Depot. At Home Depot, I bought some pencils, some of their pencils for 20 cents each, and I just glued them as a handle. It's actually quite comfy. And additionally, so as a convenience factor, when you're operating a satellite, you have to pay attention to where to point. You have to talk on the radio and think about what the guy just said and respond you know. So you're doing this one-man band sort of thing, and you want to make things as simple as possible. So rather than, you know, focusing on Doppler shift and all that stuff, you want to have everything right at eyeballs length. So I glued a cell phone wallet magnetic thing to the boom here. So when you're looking at your satellite app, I use SatTrack. So this is the app right here. It shows you, you know, I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah right now, and it shows you all the sats that I'm tracking. And if I want to go to what's up, to show me what's coming up over the horizon here shortly, it gives you a list of the satellites that you're tracking, and you can just click on that one. Let me pick one coming up here. And it shows you all the information you need, including a compass on where to point. It just, wherever the satellite is, just aim up. And it gives you the Doppler correction and all that stuff. Well, as a convenience factor, that just magnetically attaches to the antenna. And all you have to do is look at it and point. How good is that? So this is a very good performing antenna, simple and easy to use and cheap. All for, with the radio, $100 or less. So there's that. Now, there are a lot of you minimalist folks that might say, well, how can you make it even smaller than that? And I've thought about this. Now, I travel quite a bit, and I travel light. This is what I travel with. It's this is actually a Lowe's tool bag, but it's the perfect dimensions for the maximum you can carry on an airplane and for the personal sized item. So it's free to travel with this. How can you build an antenna that would fit in that you could somewhat perform well on portable travel satellite operation? Well, of course, as you get smaller, things don't work as well. So I came up with this, and I'll just bring this to the camera here without getting too involved. So basically, it's an upside down coat hanger. The radio goes down here, and this antenna literally attaches right to the top of the radio through this BNC connector. So what you do is you build a T-frame, like a cross, out of 1/4 inch fiberglass rod. You don't use tie wraps or crazy glue or something to put that in this configuration. This is all 1/4 inch fiberglass rod. So for the antenna portion, you just overlay this on top of the T-frame, and this is basically an upside down coat hanger using copper wire. So from the, what you're basically going to do is build a 70 centimeter Moxon and overlay that on top of this frame. So you've got 4 elements on 70 centimeters as a Yagi, and overlay on top of that a 2-meter dipole at 45 degrees. So that'll fit easily. You know, it's about the size of a coat hanger. You know, but look at this. And it'll fit in a travel bag like that nicely. Just a little travel tip. So if anybody wants to use any of these ideas and write an article in QST magazine for a technical publication, by all means go ahead and do it. I'm not the inventor of this stuff. I'm just using novel ways to make this all happen. I've already been published in QST magazine for another technical publication, so I don't have any desire to do it again. So by all means, if somebody wants to go ahead and and do the coat hanger idea or the little Home Depot job, feel free. When I wrote my article, I got a little over $100 for after it was published as a little stipend, author stipend, so that'll pay for your antenna. Anyway, it's been a pleasure, and I hope you enjoyed the show, and see you in the next one.